This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic. This is part 14 of graphing cosine functions, and we're going to do y equals 2 cosine of 4x plus pi on this graph. Okay, we've got some different things going on here. First of all, we have a 2 as a coefficient, so we know the amplitude is going to be 2. We also see that the coefficient of x here is 4, so for the period, remember, we have to do 2 pi divided by the coefficient of x, so that's b, in this case is 4, so our period is pi over 2. Okay, our domain's the easy one. It's always negative infinity to infinity. Now, is there a vertical shift? I don't have any number added or subtracted. By the way, there could be a number up in front, like 1 minus 2 cosine, etc. Then, of course, this would be the coefficient, and you could think of this as your plus 1. But we don't have that, so there is no vertical shift. And what about the phase shift? Well, this time there's going to be a phase shift. And what we do is set that equal to 0 to find it. So we have 4x equals negative pi. So we have x equals negative pi over 4. So this tells there's a phase shift going to the left. Pi over 4 units to the left. I'm going to put this over here, how I figured it out. That's sort of scratch work. So we've got, I'm going to just put PS for phase shift. Pi over 4 units to the right. Trying to get it all in. And we'll leave the range for after we look at the graph. So let's say we've got the amplitude, we've got the period, we've got the phase shift, we've got the domain. There's no vertical shift, so we're almost done. Now, remember, if the period is pi over 2, once we get our x-coordinates, we have to do the first x-coordinate. We want to do 1/4 of the period to get the next one. So 1/4 of pi over 2 is pi over 8. And this number right here is our first key x-coordinate. Okay, so if that's our first one, let's make sure that's clear. That's our first one. What's our second one? How would we get our second x-coordinate? We would start with our first one, which is negative pi over 4, and add on 1/4 of the period, which is pi over 8. So I'm going to need to get a common denominator, which is going to be 8s. So I'm going to leave a little room here to show you that. If I go times 2 over 2 plus pi over 8, hopefully you see that's negative 2 pi plus pi. So it's like a negative 2 plus 1, or a negative 1, or a negative pi over 8. So my first one was negative pi over 4. Which I could write as negative 2 pi over 8. It'll be easier to write it with the same. So I'm going to call that my x1 instead of first. How about that? That's our first one. And what's our second one? Our second one is going to be negative 2 pi over 8 plus pi over 8. So that's negative pi over 8. So now we are ready to do a little chart, and we're going to put this in for our first x-coordinate, this for our second x-coordinate, and we notice that all we're doing is we're going to keep adding pi over 8 to get our next, to our third, fourth, and fifth key x-coordinate. So we start off with negative 2 pi over 8. I think I'm going to need a little more space here. Oops. Didn't grab it all. There we go. Okay, so we started out with a negative pi over 4, which I'm going to write as negative 2 pi over 8. Much easier if we have a common denominator. Now, we added pi over 8 to get the negative pi over 8. Really just think of it as the coefficients, like negative 2, negative 1. Now, if you add pi over 8, you're at 0, right? And you add pi over 8 to that, you get pi over 8. You add pi over to that, you get 2 pi over 8. And what should be true is between negative 2 pi over 8 to 2 pi over 8, that should be the period, which was, go back here, our period was pi over 2 units, right? So let's check it out. Is the difference of those between 2 pi over 8 and negative 2 pi over 8? That's 4 pi over 8, right? Because you go plus plus. 4 pi over 8 is definitely pi over 2 units. So I see I do have a period of 2 pi. That's just a little check. All right, now over here on the right, we've got our usual x and y coordinates, and now we know if we're plugging in these values for the x coordinates, I could use these to figure out the cosine of this 4x plus pi. So my y value is going to be 2 times something, right? And what is for each of these? And that's going to be 2 times those coordinates you see over there, which are 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1, giving me these y coordinates. And now it's easy to see what the range is. It ranges between negative 2 and 2. Now to convince yourself, let's just put any of these values I have over here for the x coordinate. You could actually plug it in for x and make sure you really do get that y coordinate. I'm going to leave that for you to do. In other words, go ahead and put in 0 for x and figure out what 2 times the cosine of pi is, and hopefully you will get the answer I got, right, which is going to be negative 2. All right, so we're ready to graph it. We're going in between negative 2 pi over 8 and 2 pi over 8. And for the y values, we're going to go in between negative 2 and 2. All right, so here is our little table of ordered pairs. This is what we already figured out, right? The domain, range, period, amplitude, and the phase shift. Now we're ready to graph it. So I see that I'm going in between negative 2 pi and 2 pi over 8 and 2 pi over 8. So you can go ahead and go all the way to pi by doing 8 units, but you got to make sure you got to at least go over to the left 2, right? So here, that's negative 2 pi over 8 right here, right? Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That would be 8 pi over 8, which I could just call pi. Okay? But actually, my whole graph is just going in between 2 pi over 8, negative 2 pi over 8, and 2 pi over 8. So, for instance, this is 2 pi over, this is 4 pi over 8, which is the same thing as pi over 2. So let's graph these. We've got negative 2 pi over 8, 2. Oops, I forgot to draw where 2 is. So let's say there's 2. There's negative 2. So we have starting up here. And then negative pi over 8, 0. So that's just right here. We have 0, negative 2. Pi over 8, 0. And 2 pi over 8 up at 2. And there it is. That's one full cycle. But of course you could keep going because there's room if you want to get a nicer little picture of this. So we know this is kind of going down at this point. Just did a rough sketch. And we got more than one period here. And there's our graph of y equals 2 cosine of 4x plus pi. This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic.